Welcome. Thursday evening, 6 p.m. Mike Delvisco, Sheila Bunch over there on the other side. Another awesome episode of the Outdoor Showcase. I'm really excited about this show. This thing came together so quick. We got a ton of great guests and a ton of great information, Sheila.
I know that, and I am so happy to see. You know what? I am very happy that our show is going so great. And people are getting so much response from it. And Mike, you've done a good job.
Yeah, thanks. It's been really good. It's growing and growing. Looks like we're going to have, this was the special show. Usually we're the last Thursday of the month, but we had so much content that we were able to squeeze one on here at the beginning of August, which is nice because that was just, 2 weeks ago we had another show. And then our next show is going to be August 19th. So, and it looks like we're going to have 2 shows for September too. So you're going to have to keep watching. They're going to be on Thursday nights whenever they're on, but we may throw a special one in every now and then like we're doing here tonight.
All right. That sounds good. We ready to get started on this?
We got way too much content. We'll get on and chit chat a little bit later. We're at the end of the show. We're going to get rock and rolling here.
Yeah, we got to hear from Todd and Brian and Bernie. They don't want to hear us.
Yeah, and Matt Airy too is coming on. So Bernie's backstage now. We're going to get him on, Bernie Schultz, a little bit later. But right now we got our friends from Pulse Fish Lures coming up, and they have special announcement, new bait to announce. They got all kinds of crazy stuff going on. So we're going to get right into it.
Yes. Hey, Mike, don't everybody need to continue watching this? Aren't they a surprise?
Yes, continue watching. We will post, and we will be talking about it here a little bit later in the show. Just sprung on us here recently in the last 20 minutes, especially from Pulse Fish Lures.
Sounds good.
Let's get this thing going.
Attention! The East Tennessee Fishing Show is back. The biggest and best fishing event in the South returns January 20th through the 23rd. Shop the largest selection of custom tackle for bass, crappie, striper, fly fishing, catfish, and more. Plus, we have added saltwater. Get the best deals of the year on new boats. Learn about the latest in fishing equipment with free seminars from top anglers. It's back. Don't miss the biggest fishing event of the year, the East Tennessee Fishing Show.
What's up, y'all? Elite Series Pro and Pulse Fish team member Matt Airy here, and I'm excited to announce the launch of our spinning PJ. It's a new signature underspin. We've been working on it for quite some time now, and I want to go through the components of this underspin to show you what makes it unique from all the other underspins out there. First off, we've got our signature head design, same thing on the Pulse Jig with the collar below it. You see what we've added here is a little wire keeper, okay, to keep your soft plastic trailers secure. 3-aught Gamakatsu hook. One thing we want to do is make this thing ready to fish straight out of the pack. 3-aught Gammy light wire hook. That light wire hook is very important to me when fishing underspins. Look at the head design there. Right here at the end, you see a little wire arm coming out below. What we did is we tested the distance on that arm because what we wanted was an underspin that as soon as you cast it out there, count it down to your desired depth, and you started your retrieve, the blade was running true from the start of that retrieve all the way through the finish of that retrieve. And Spro barrel swivels, best components you can get on the market. Super high quality underspin, tournament ready. Go check them out. They're available now, pulsefishlures.com or your nearest retailer.
All right, everybody. Mike Delvisco back here with the Outdoor Showcase. And there you go. Another sneak peek. Some great new stuff from Pulse Fish Lures. They always seem to make really, really cool stuff. And if you're familiar with their jig, the Pulse Jig, well, they're at it again. Because as you just saw, our buddy Matt Airy, Elite Series Pro, showing you the new underspin. Super excited about this. And we got both Todd Goad and Matt Airy coming on with us right now to talk a little bit about this from the Let's Talk Fish studios somewhere deep in North Carolina. Todd Goad, Matt Airy, how you guys doing?
Good, Mike. How are you?
Doing awesome, thanks. And, coincidentally, Todd lives in the same town as I do, and we've got to be friends over the last couple of years here, and it's the bait that he makes. It's just super cool that, something that's undeveloped for a lot of guys. There's not a lot of guys that are fishing this style bait, and it's incredibly effective in shallow water, deep water, mid depths. It's, in my opinion, one of the most versatile type of baits that you could fish with, and the possibilities are limitless. With the Pulse Fish Jig, and it'll catch them when they're schooling, it'll catch them when they're on the bottom, it'll catch them when they're not aggressive, and now, as we see, the new underspin. So I'm really, really excited about that. And I'm just going to turn it over to you guys and let you guys talk to me about what you've got and some of the other stuff too.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, so the underspin, that's something that Todd and I have working on for quite a bit of time now together. And the biggest thing for an underspin for me is, a lot of the ones that you buy straight out of the pack, I've had to tune them. I've had to change the barrel swivels on them. One thing that's frustrating to me is when I throw an underspin out there, as soon as I start my retrieve, whether fast or slow, I want my blade turning true from the start of that retrieve to the finish of that retrieve. And I'm really picky on my hook too, and Todd knows that. He probably got frustrated with me because we kept going through and talking about different hooks. But Todd gets this technique. He gets, he spent a lot of time on these herring lakes and things like that. So we both had a lot of input on the design of this bait. But a couple things real quick that makes this, to me, this underspin, the spinning PJ, the best one on the market. And first off, let's talk about the hook. To me, a good underspin has got to have a good light wire, high quality hook. This is a 3/0 Gamakatsu, but it's a light wire. That just pins those fish a lot better, and you're less likely to use them. You're not ripping as big a hole in their mouth and things like that. A lot of times when you set the hook with an underspin style bait, you're not setting it like you would a jig or a frog or something like that. You're just kind of tightening down and reeling into them. You don't want to have to jerk super hard. Let them eat it. Let them come up behind it. They're going to come up behind it. They're going to eat it. Sometimes I'm not going to slacking the line, tighten the line down, and just reel into them. And that light wire hook is critical in being able to hook them properly, on an underspin style bait. Another thing, if you look at the head of this bait, it's the Colts signature swim bait head, basically. We changed the hook, we kept the collar on there, and we've got a little wire keeper running out the bottom there. So that holds your soft plastic securely in place, and you don't have to mess with the super glue and the things that we all as fishermen hate messing with all day long. Here's the key to this deal. Super high quality components. We use a Spro barrel swivel, super high quality barrel swivel. But if you look at the wire arm that comes out the bottom of the head there, what we did is we played with the distances and the angle of that arm in order to make that blade start turning the second you start your retrieve and stay true all the way to the end of the retrieve. So you don't have the blade filing up, you don't have it rolling over on its side. This bait runs true from start to finish. It's available in 3/8 ounce and 5/8 ounce, 4 fish catching colors. I've got them all right here in front of me. We got the pearl, Tennessee shad, which y'all boys are probably a little partial to. We've got albino, and then we've got smoky right there. But yeah, I mean, the key to this thing is it's tournament ready. As soon as you buy one off the shelf, you take it out of the pack, put your favorite soft plastic trailer on there, and go to town.
And that's a great point, Matt, because I don't proclaim to be an expert on underspin baits, but I have been in situations where I've thrown it. And it's with other brands, it's really hard to get the bait dialed in so that it, number one, runs straight, number two, the blades spin. And even with the, putting the plastic trailer on the back too, a lot of the other ones, you have to get that trailer exactly right or the bait just does not run right at all. And I know, you guys have your own plastics too that match perfectly with the heads, which is really cool. And I'm sure the development of that too, with the correct size, the correct balance, all comes into one great package.
Yeah, that especially when you're dealing not necessarily with a paddle tile swim bait, if you want to put something like that on here, which works great. And I do that a lot of times when it calls for something, when I feel like the situation calls for something a little bit more action. But like the little fork tail soft plastic minnow, that's when rigging it straight on the spinning PJ itself, it becomes critical. It needs to be straight on there because, yeah, you're right, Mike. That can cause a lot of foul ups and things like that, and that can be frustrating. It's super frustrating to me, but I'm super anal when it comes to certain things for obvious reasons. But yeah, that's definitely critical also.
Yeah.
One thing, Matt and I did go back and forth a lot on this bait. I would send him samples, and we talked about the hook size. We talked at length about that arm, but this bait's made in the USA, just like every other bait in our Pulse Fish Lures lineup. And, you know, we're not going to send anything out the door unless it's 100% right. So we spent a lot of time developing this to get it to run true out of the pack and be tournament ready, like he said. So a lot of R&D went into this between us and threw it in a lot of places. And I can tell you it catches really big smallmouth at Cherokee too in the wintertime. So this has been in development for a long time.
Awesome. And what size heads does it come in?
3/8 and 5/8.
And I find that, you know, a lot of times when I'm throwing it, that 3/8 is like the perfect size too, because it doesn't fall too fast. You can work the water column with it. You can fish in a variety of different depths because, you know, there's not just one place. Just like with the Pulse Fish Jig, there you can throw that shallow, you can throw it deep, you can throw it in between. And I'm sure that you guys did a lot of that too with the new underspin.
Yeah, and one of the reasons we did a 5/8 ounce model instead of a 1/2 ounce, I did a lot of research on that too. There's a lot of 1/2 ounce underspins on the market, but there's not many 5/8s. And one of the things I like with the 5/8s, like fishing Hartwell and Lanier and those herring type lakes, in the wintertime, you want that bait to stay on the bottom as long as possible. So to be able, that little bit of extra weight in that 5/8, you can really slow roll that on the bottom in ditches and, you know, in draws and places like that where spotted bass gang up in the wintertime. So we went with the 5/8 size instead of the 1/2 just for that reason alone.
That's awesome. And just some recommendations maybe for some folks that have not fished that type of bait before. You know, where are you going to throw it? Count it down. I'm sure there's an infinite number of ways to fish it, but your preferred methods for fishing this bait?
There's a lot of different ways, man. You know, this is kind of similar to the Pulse Jig in the fact that, you know, we spoke about this earlier. You can catch fish on this bait 12 months out of the year. Now, different applications, you know, one of my favorite times to fish it is like Todd was talking about, is in the wintertime in super cold water and fishing it very slow on the bottom. That's when I would opt for like the 5/8 ounce version. But I've caught a lot of fish, you know, on underspins during like the shad spawn and things like that too, especially when those shad are, you know, certain lakes around here have a lot of bridge columns and floating docks and things like that. The shad like to get around and spawn on. And that's when I'll opt with something with a little bit more action. I'll go to like a paddle tail style trailer as opposed to just a fork tail minnow style trailer. I like something that, you know, matches the hatch a little bit more and gives it a little bit more action because those fish that time of year are super aggressive and they're there feeding on shad and they're feeding heavy. So the shad spawn, you know, typically around here it's sometime mid to late April all the way through mid-May. And then the wintertime, fishing it on those herring lakes and some of those ditches and creek mouths and things like that, where those fish are known to corral those herring, and fishing a larger version would be a little bit more applicable in situations like that.
Surprisingly too, Mike, it's a good bait for schooling fish too in the summertime. It's also really good to throw over brush piles out, you know, 25, 30, 35, 40 foot deep brush piles that, you know, top out in that 10 to 20 foot range. That works really well along with our Pulse Jig. But like Matt said, this is a bait that gets a lot of attention in the wintertime, but it's really a bait that catches them 12 months out of the year. If you put it in your arsenal, you'll find you'll catch a lot of fish, you know, in the months you wouldn't think you'd catch them on it.
Yeah, that top like the Todd was talking about can be amazing when those big wads of spotted bass or largemouth starts to suspend a lot of times throughout late June and into July when sometimes the lead bite seems tough or whatever it may be and they start getting around brush a little bit better. That little dude right there will catch them.
I remember a few years ago, a top level pro won an event in June on an underspin at Lake Eufaula. That was one of his key things, throwing over brush piles. And he didn't want to let the secret get out. And I called him and I said, "What are you doing catching them on that?" And he said, "Don't tell nobody." So, you know, it's something that catches them 12 months out of the year.
Yeah, awesome. And for guys that want to find out more, I know this product was just recently released here not too long ago. They want to find some more information, order some, take them out in the lake and go fish. How do they do that?
You can get them off our website at pulsefishlures.com or at your tackle retailer. They're already in quite a few stores, and you know, they're selling fast. It's been a very successful launch and a very popular bait.
Awesome, awesome. And we're going to take a real quick break, and we've got more with Todd Goad, Matt Airy coming up here on the Outdoor Showcase. I'm Mike Delvisco. We'll be right back.
Catch the best in outdoor products every month on the Outdoor Showcase. Hosts Sheila Bunch and Mike Delvisco bring you new, unique, and awesome products for the outdoors, featuring guests and segments. Whether you fish, boat, camp, or just love the outdoors, there's always something for everyone. We are live the last Thursday of every month on the Pride Outdoor Network, available on Fire TV and Roku. For more info or to have your products showcased, visit theoutdoorshowcase.com. We'll see you in the great outdoors.
Hey, Mike Delvisco back with you here, Outdoor Showcase. Matt Airy and Todd Goad visiting with us from the Let's Talk Fish studio somewhere in North Carolina. And, as you saw, that underspin is going to be the hot deal, brand new from Pulse Fish Lures. I can't wait to get my hands on one. I might have to go stop here in town and visit my buddies down there at Bucks and Bass and see if they've got some in stock so I can go fishing with it. But, that's the new thing. But you've got other stuff, too, that you guys have become famous for. And one of them I want to get a look at is that Swimbait head.
Absolutely, Mike. We took that patented kind of Pulse head and, we put a wire keeper on it. What we did was we put it a little bit further back below the collar because, when you put those, Kitech type swim baits or swim bait on, when you set the hook on a fish, most of the time they tear right there in the center. So we put the wire keeper a little bit further back to hold that bait in place a little bit longer. So it'll save you a few swim baits throughout the day, course of a day of fishing, and probably save you some money too. But light wire mustad ultra point hook in this bait, really sharp, and that guppy style head is real popular. Gives it a really good, with a paddle tail swim bait, it gives it, that head design gives it a little bit of side to side extra kick action too. So it works really well, and it's been super popular in our Pulse lineup.
Awesome. And what size does that come in? All the traditional sizes that you?
Yeah, we have them in 1/8, quarter, 3/8, 5/8, and 7/8. And one of the neat things about our 1/8 ounce, we put one size larger hook in that 1/8 ounce, so it'll carry a 2.8 and a 3.3 swim bait, a paddle tail type swim bait, and it works great for A-rigs and those kind of applications. So we've had a lot of success with those, having that little bit larger hook in it for that A-rig application. Yeah,
that's actually a great idea, because especially with an A-rig, you start putting 5, even if you've got, 2 with no hooks in it, or 3, whatever the rule is from state to state, you start putting 1/4 ounce heads or 3/8 heads, and it doesn't take long to get that thing to be 3, 4, or 5 ounces. So a lot of times I prefer a smaller head too if I'm fishing it in, you're going to Gunnersville or places like that, or Kentucky Lake where you got to fish it a little bit shallower. That having that 1/8 ounce head's nice.
Absolutely.
And that light wire hook will save you a lot of money on those A-rigs, because when you get hung up, it'll actually give a little bit. So you can get that A-rig back, that $25 or whatever you're throwing.
Yeah, good point as well.
Yeah, and we have the swim bait head in pearl and smoky, Tennessee shad, chartreuse, a lot of different colors to choose from too.
Yeah. Awesome. And I see some other things there on your table too that, from a standpoint of a guy that likes to fish a vibrating jig, chatterbait style bait, there's times when they just don't eat that thing really well. And when that starts to happen, I'm picking up a Pulse Fish jig and usually wearing them out. There's something very, very unique and different about that style of bait, that style of head, and the bait that you guys make that just triggers those fish into biting when they don't eat anything else.
Yeah, and it's kind of neat moving back to East Tennessee. You can tell a lake where they haven't seen a bait like this because they'll knock a foot of slack in your line when they hit it. So it's a lot of fun kind of introducing those fish in East Tennessee to this bait. But, this in the scrounger type, lure category, I guess, our bait has a lot of differentiators. And, number one, that bill, look how clear that bill is. It's like looking at fluorocarbon, and And our bill material doesn't yellow. We use the highest quality bill material that really money can buy. So it stays clear a lot longer than the competitors, lasts a long time. The way we apply the bill to the head is a proprietary method that we use. It puts that cup in the bill. It gives it that hunting action that you're looking for. So those things really separate us from the other baits in the scrounger type category. We're the only bait in that category that has it in 5 sizes and 7 colors, all the way from, this is an albino one, but we've got it in our chartreuse with our own plastic on it. This thing is a killer up north for smallmouth. And surprisingly, this in clear water in these southern lakes, you know, this is probably a secret I don't want to let out. But if you throw this at Hartwell and Lanier, you're going to catch a lot of fish on a chartreuse head. People would think, man, you can't catch them on that. Absolutely, they will kill this thing. But this is really popular up north in the smallmouth waters as well. We've got it in our 1 ounce model too, for ledge fishing offshore. And one of the things, you know, everybody years ago, you know, when Jason Lambert won a bunch of those events out there ledge fishing, he was throwing a scrounger type bait with a big jerky J on it. And probably every bass in the Tennessee River chain has seen a jerky J at some point now. We found that our 1 ounce model with a fluke style bait, it's more of a finesse type approach. You catch a lot more fish now coming behind people throwing those great big things offshore, and it'll get you a lot more bites. However, having said that, we do have another bait in development that will probably be released next year. That's going to be a 1 ounce model. That's going to have a bigger hook in it. It's going to be made for people wanting to throw those bigger type things. But I've caught a lot of fish on this 1 ounce model this summer offshore, up around the house up there, Douglas, Cherokee, and places like that. So got a lot of different sizes. We feel it's a bait you should have, in your arsenal. It's another tool in the toolbox. And, a lot of times things that win an event or win your local club tournament, somebody's always doing a little something different than the other guy. And sometimes this bait right here can be that little extra, that little differentiator that'll get you extra bite or two.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Todd, so that 1 ounce bait too, because Matt talked a little bit about, the hook on the underspin, not being a thin wire, not tearing, a hole in the fish's mouth. You think of that 1 ounce, making a long cast, you got a big fish on, you're fighting them for a long time. What size hook are you using on that 1 ounce to keep the fish on, keep them buttoned up and not letting them come off halfway back to the boat?
This one's got a 6/0 light wire Mustad Ultra Point, and it's made. We use that size hook because the bill material, when you fold the bill over, it just barely clears the hook. So those fish are collapsing that, and it makes it kind of weedless too. So light wire hook, like Matt said, it's perfect for hooking those fish like that.
And I'll tell you something, just a quick tip: when you're fishing the bigger scrounger baits, 3/4, 1 ounce with a little bit bigger bait. I mean, if you put a little bit bigger plastic, it's going to call for a little bit bigger hook. It's kind of inevitable. So you're going to go to a 5, 6, even a 7/0, some of these bigger baits. When you hook one on that big bait, it's like hooking one on a big giant spoon or something to me. Don't sit there and play him for 30 minutes. Have the right setup and the right line to where you can just winch him to the boat, put him in the boat. Don't mess around with him, because the bigger the hook, the bigger the bait, the more leverage the fish has, the more likely you are to lose him the longer you play around with that fish. So make sure your rod and reel set up and your line size is big enough where you don't have to play them for 30 minutes and you can put them in the boat.
Awesome. And speaking of that, we're going to take a look at a quick video clip that Matt did, just talking about that exact same thing. So I'm Mike Delvisco, Matt Airy, Todd Goad. We'll be right back. The Outdoor Showcase.
What's up, y'all? Elite Series Pro and Team Pulse Fish member Matt Airy here, and I want to talk to you about my setup for the Pulse Jig. I've got a 3/8 ounce Pulse Jig on there. I use this same style setup. I will go up to like a 7.3, but this is a 7-foot medium action, fast tip, loose, custom Pro Series. It's a hypermag reel. It's actually an 8-to-1 reel, like a high-speed reel, because my theory on that, a lot of times we like to fish the Pulse Jig fast, a lot of times we like to fish it slow, but it's a lot easier to slow down a high-speed reel than it is to speed up a low-speed reel. 10-pound line. Okay, most all the Pulse Jigs that I'm throwing, whether it's 1/4, 3/8, 5/8, I'm throwing it on 10-pound line, and that is extremely important. It's 10-pound P-line tactical fluorocarbon, and the reason we throw it on light line is because we don't want to hinder the action of that bait. The bigger the diameter you go, the more it hinders the action of a lot of different baits out there, not just the Pulse Jig. But what's so cool about the Pulse Jig is that subtle little swimming action. You can burn it, you can fish it slow, but as far as the setup's concerned, high-speed reel, loose hypermag, 7-foot medium action rod, 10-pound fluorocarbon line. I use that for the 3/8, the quarters, up to a 5/8. Sometimes if I use the 1-ounce model, I will go to like a 7.3 medium heavy, just because you need a little bit beefier rod, beefier setup. And I might upsize my line to 12-pound line, but that's as big as I'll ever go. And that's only if I'm going up to the 5/8 and 1-ounce models. So that's my setup for the Pulse Jig. Hope that helps you. There again, the key components is that light line, okay, high-speed reel, and a good medium action rod with a fast tip. But hope that helps everybody, knows what setup to use when you're throwing the Pulse Jig.
All right. Awesome stuff there from my buddies at Pulse Fish Lures. And we got another special guest coming right up. We got Brian New and Todd Goad coming back with us as well. And I alluded to a couple of things at the very beginning of this show, and we also had a social media post out to be watching for something that's going to be really special that they're going to announce. This was kind of a last-minute thing that, Todd approached me with. He wanted to do, and we're going to, as soon as we get them on here, we're going to talk a little bit about that for you guys. And here we are right now. Brian, what's going on, brother? And Todd, how are you, man?
Good, man. Good.
Good, Mike.
Yeah. I'm awesome. What a bunch of great content so far. I tell you a quick story, Todd, before we get into this, that I was out in the water today driving around just, looking at stuff, and the fish were all just crazy suspended. And all I thought about all day was if I had one of them underspins with me, it would have been the deal to catch some of them fish. And next time I go out there, of course, they'll probably be on the bottom next time I go, but it is what it is. It'll catch them there too. But you got something really special. You approached people with about halfway through the day, and it took me all day to figure out kind of how to do it. But let's let the cat out of the bag.
Yeah, man. And thank you, Mike, for having us on this show. And it's great to see the content. Great to see the spreading the sport of fishing and growing the sport. It's really, really neat to see. And you've got a good platform, and you and Sheila have done an incredible job. And we look to be, excited to be at the East Tennessee Fishing Show next January. We're excited to be there for that too. But for the viewers, I appreciate everybody taking their time out to watch this show. We're going to do a special discount code for the show here. The code's going to be OSLive30. If you go on our website at pulsefishlures.com, use that code OSLive30, you'll be able to get 30% off of your order, everything on the site, including the new Spinning PJ. So got a lot of cool stuff there, and just thought we'd extend that courtesy to everybody watching the show, and appreciate all the support. And we've had an incredible year here at Pulse Fish Lures. It's been great to have New on the team, and him and I have known each other for quite a while, and things worked out, and he's just a great representative of the sport, and he's got a great future ahead of him, and so excited to be able to work with him. And having said that, we're earlier in the show, I mentioned that we're working on a bait for next year. Well, that's, Brian and I have been working on that bait. So that's something we're going to come out with. It's going to be his signature bait next year. So we're really excited about that.
It's going to be a catcher. It's going to be a catcher for sure.
Yeah. And Brian, you and I have not actually had a chance to meet yet face to face, but man, I tell you what, I'm a fan watching. I've done this now for 4 decades too, and I still love watching bass fishermen. We got Bernie Schultz coming up later, and I've known him forever too, and every time he gets on camera, I love watching him catch them. But man, you lit it up this year. From the St. Johns River, which is not the easiest place to go win a major tournament. St. John's, you think you go to Florida and like 10-pounders jump in the boat everywhere you go, and it's not the case. St. John's is probably one of the most challenging fisheries that there is. Now, you've got so many complications and being able to find them, and you just wrecked them during that tournament.
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I love Florida. Florida was kind of a thorn in my side for several years. When I first started going down there, and then it finally started clicking with me. But that being said, the St. John's probably is the toughest place. As far as like a big tournament venue, it is probably the toughest one in Florida, and it just worked out for me this year, man. All the stars aligned, and you know, uh, things just work out. I mean, they always work out one way or the other. Sometimes, you don't think they work out good. Like you have a bad tournament, you got to turn around and make that negative into a positive. And luckily, we had a positive, so we can take a positive and make it a bigger positive. But even when you have those negatives, you got to turn them around and make them to a positive, and you can do that some way. Really, not just fishing. I mean, any aspect of life. That's my approach.
Yeah.
That's one of the cool things I love about Brian is he wears his heart on his sleeve, and if he says he catches them on a chatterbait, he's caught them on a chatterbait. If he catches them on a pulse jig, he's caught them on a pulse jig. But the way he broke down the St. John's event when he won that, and talking about how he wouldn't have found that shell bed, had he had a bad event there the year before, but he learned. He's always learning. He's just such a student of the game, and it's neat to see somebody share that with the fishing world, because there's folks out there that kind of keep their cards pretty close to their vest, and we all keep our share of secrets on how we catch them and this and that and the other. But Brian does a great job breaking stuff down to help people. And you mentioned something earlier in the show about a bladed jig, and sometimes a pulse jig works better. Sometimes when a bladed jig doesn't work, and it's funny you said that, because Brian and I were talking about when he was at Pickwick, he had that exact scenario actually happen, and we talked about it. So I'm gonna pass it to Brian and let him tell that story about that difference.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a big thing. A lot of people throw a bladed jig chatterbait, and a lot of people throw like the pulse jig scrounger style baits. But me personally, I've never heard anybody putting those in the same category. But if you really think about it, a pulse jig or any style, scrounger type bait, it really basically is a finesse chatterbait. It's got, yes, it is different, by the way, the way it wobbles, it is a little different, but it's somewhat the same. They've got a lot of similarities, but at the end of the day, it's a lot more subtle, smaller profile, a more subtle vibration, a tighter vibration. It's not as aggressive. So at Pickwick, we were there, big flood come in, canceled a day or two of the tournament. And basically, which I love tournaments like that. You scratch everything and you go out, and day one of the tournament, everybody has to go practice, or at least 99% of the time, the people that succeed have to go practice, because you can't go off of what happened before the flood. Now that it's flooded. So, anyways, I stumble across one little bitty patch of eelgrass that I seen on my 360. Didn't know about it before, and when I seen it, like, I just seen a patch of eelgrass. I didn't know there was 1,000 bass on it, but there was. So I was catching them on a 3/4 ounce chatterbait. I mean, I was catching them every cast, literally every cast. I'd catch 20, 30, and then they kind of stop. They start nipping at it, and I'd leave. I'd come back, and I'd catch 15, 20. They'd stop biting. I'd leave. I'd come back. Well, 2 days of that kind of got to those fish. So day 3 of that event, I start on it. The first cast, 3/4 ounce chatterbait again. I throw it out there. I catch one the first cast. And then the next cast, I had one just nip it. The next cast, nothing. The next cast, nothing. I immediately knew something was wrong. I knew there was still fish there, but I knew that those fish, there was several things. It was the pressure. The current was starting to slow down. The water was coming down a little bit. It was starting to try to get out of that flood stage. So I immediately said, hey, I've been in this situation somewhat like this before. I immediately picked up a Pulse Jig, a 3/8 ounce Pulse Jig. And literally the first cast I caught one. Yeah, I thought that was going to work. And then about 5 or 6 casts in a row, I caught one every single cast. And, without making that switch, I don't get another bite more than likely. And that was my toughest day of the, I didn't make the top 10. I think I finished 16th, 17th in that event. But, without making that decision, like, hey, put the chatterbait down, back it up a little bit, go to the Pulse Jig, somewhat the same presentation, but more subtle, a lot more finesse. And really, there's so many situations that I throw a Pulse Jig, but to me, that's one of my favorite ones. I like fishing isolated targets, but I also, I like power fishing. So, like, it's isolated target, but I'm fishing pretty fast. I'm throwing big baits. But, when you're doing that, you've got to back up. And, the Pulse Jig, to me, it's still power fishing, but it's finesse power fishing. Because it's that same fairly quick presentation. Yeah, you can slow it down and, make it even more finesse. But even that fairly quick presentation is pretty good finesse, presentation.
Yeah. And I noticed that, and Pickwick has a lot of similarities too with Douglas, believe it or not, that, when that water, especially the water's starting to come down on Douglas right now, and it's falling every day. And especially in the fall, it starts dropping really big. And I've seen Pickwick drop, 6 inches overnight. I've seen Douglas drop 6 inches. And that first thing in the morning bite on Douglas, especially in the fall, is extreme. You may catch a whole limit of fish or 2 limits of fish in the first 20 minutes. And it's typically my go-to bait is 99% of the time bait. But I've had times when they drop that water so severe that they'll eat your chatterbait, and it feels like they're hitting it so hard, and you don't even hook any fish up. Almost like they're just running into it. And I've discovered something that if you throw a pulse, they eat it. And when they won't eat chatterbait, that's when you back it up. And there's a lot of really cool instances, not just this one, but others too. And that's when you were talking about your situation in Pickwick, it just reminded me of 100 different things of scenarios where it worked. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
the cool thing about our baits is not only do they catch bass, but they catch stripers, hybrids. People can go on my Facebook page on Todd Goat, and a couple of weeks ago, I got some pretty cool active target Lowrance footage of catching a bunch of hybrids on a 5/8 ounce Pulse Jig, and it was every cast for 30 minutes. They just knock a foot of slack in it, but it's a multi-species type bait too. So that's always fun when you're trying to fish a bass tournament and hybrids are schooling, and you're like, hey, let's go catch a couple of these for a few minutes, and we go bass fishing later. They're biting. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. Let the fall and the wintertime come around. Brian knew he don't chase some green ones very much. He goes after the stripers, and that's I throw 2 things, then 2 things only. I throw an umbrella rig and I throw a Pulse Jig. That's the only 2 things that I throw striper fishing, and I catch them, buddy. And it's fun. Oh my gosh, it's fun. And that's what's cool. So, a lot of times the umbrella rig it's the deal. It's the best thing. But you take your kids, take your wife, take, a friend that doesn't fish. Just really anybody that doesn't fish a lot, it's hard for them to throw an umbrella rig. And this is bass fishing also. Wintertime, umbrella rig's really good for bass fishing. Well, you want to take, somebody that can't throw the umbrella rig, because let's face it, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. That Pulse Jig, it catches them. It catches them big time. So like this last winter, I took my my sister-in-law, and striper fishing. She couldn't throw the umbrella rig. I tied her a Pulse Jig on, and normally, somebody throwing something other than umbrella rig, they kind of get left behind, but she was right there with me. 1 for 1. She was catching them, and she was able to throw it. It wasn't as heavy. and she could throw it a lot more accurate. And it's just something that needs to be, in your tackle box. Definitely something you need in your arsenal. It's not a cure-all. I mean, nothing's a cure-all. You don't throw a crankbait when you need to throw a jig, or you don't throw a chatterbait when you need to throw a buzzbait. There's always tools for the job. Like one thing, and I tell my wife this especially because she likes to get on me about buying tackle and how much tackle I have. But at the end of the day, like, tackle is another tool. You don't use a 9/16 ratchet for the same thing you would use a 9/16 wrench. I mean, yes, they'll fit the same, the same bolt, but you need one over the other in certain jobs, certain situations. So that's why you have to have all this stuff. That's why you need a chatterbait. That's why you need a pulse jig. That's why you need a Zoom super fluke. And that's why you need, the pulse plastic. I mean, it all has its place, and you need the tools. A mechanic needs all his tools. A fisherman needs all his tools as well.
That's right. And Todd, they can get these tools with your special code here. Before we got to take a break, and then we got to get Bernie Schultz on before the show closes here. So once again, your generous offer here, discount code.
It's OS Live 30 on the website pulsefishlures.com.
Yeah, and they can check you guys out, social media, Instagram. Check out Brian, check out Matt, check out Todd. He's got a bunch of awesome baits. I can't wait to see what you guys got coming next year. Never mind what you got this year. So thanks so much, guys, for being in. We're going to take a break, and then we'll come back with Bernie Schultz to end the show here. I'm Mike Delvisco. That's Brian New. That's Todd Goad.
Thanks for having us, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it, bud.
We'll be right back. Outdoor Showcase.
Available now. Go check them out, pulsefishlures.com or your nearest retailer.
Hey, Mike Delvisco, back with you here. This hour is just going by, and saving the best for last, man. I've known Bernie Schultz for I don't even know. I guess probably 40 years, something like that. One of my favorite guys in the fishing business, and somebody that I've learned an awful lot about. Whether he knows it or not, there's two guys in this industry that I've probably learned the most from, and Bernie's one of them, and another guy named Joe Thomas, who Bernie knows really well too, is another one. But we got Bernie here right now. Bernie and I have been talking here about the last 4 months about trying to get him on, and we're trying to pick the right time, and we kind of figured podcast so we could talk a little bit about that and some things. But pleasure to have you on, my friend. Nice to see you.
Likewise, Mike. Thanks for having
me. Yeah. So I'm just going to start with this here. About 30, you told something. This stuck with me, and it sticks with me today when people ask me about, how do you get into the fishing business? How do you make a living doing it other than fishing tournaments? And you told me that you can't take fishing lures to the bank and pay your mortgage. I don't know if you remember telling me that, but you did, 30 some odd years ago. And the importance of being diverse in this business, not just fishing tournaments, but, working with the media, working with seminar promoters, trying to do as much as you can. And you are the epitome of that. You do so many different things in this industry, from helping lure design, working with sponsors, doing media stuff. You're one of the most active promoters in this whole business.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, my advice to anybody trying to get in the sport, it's education first, and make sure you have something more to offer than just angling skills. Communication skills are extremely important. You got to be able to communicate not just with fans or media, but also with sponsors. Whether it's developing new products or helping companies are service oriented, get themselves established in the market. It's important to be able to communicate with those different people.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, the other thing too is juggling all of this. You know, there's so many guys that just fish and they don't go out and they do seminars, or they don't want to do them, and you don't see them at some of the shows, and you just see them fish. And I personally, from my standpoint, think I'd have burnt out. You know, if I did nothing but just fish tournaments, it would really get on me after a while. So I like the diversity of, you know, being able to do different things, but you really got to be able to juggle that too. You know, when it comes time to tournament fish, you know, you're right there. You know, I sit and I watch all the tournaments, and, you know, anytime you're there on the mix or live, you know, I'm a fan of watching Bernie Schultz fish.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It seems like these days I strike out a lot, but once in a while I get dialed in and things go my way, at least part of the time. Anybody listening to this podcast knows that if they're aware of tournament fishing and the strategies involved, it's really hard to be consistent for 4 days. Very difficult. 2 days, maybe 3 is challenging, but 4 is really difficult. And you know, it's hard to keep things on track for that length of time, because in a 4-day span, you're going to experience different variables that you didn't perhaps plan on, whether it's weather related or pressure from other anglers, mechanical failures, just running out of fish. I mean, there's so many things that play into it. But yeah, it's always nice to get on there for the weekend coverage, and especially on Sunday.
Yeah. And we got to watch you for 4 days there at one of your favorite places. In fact, one of my favorite places to go fish up there at Thousand Islands. And a little bit, I've never fished that area of the river. You know, years ago when we used to have events there, you know, back when they were the invitationals, we'd always go out of Clayton, and everybody, and I know you remember this because you've got a ton of history at that body of water, but everybody used to go run into Lake Ontario and down there in Sandy Pond. Joe Thomas and I drove like 150 miles down the lake one day with no GPS, and, you know, found a bunch of fish down there. But, you know, that's just a different world now. You know, the smallmouth fishing is phenomenal in that river.
Yeah, it was a completely different world. No GPS, no forward-facing sonar, no video game fishing. I mean, it was a different world. You had to triangulate. If you found fish deep, it was always a challenge trying to get back to them, especially in bad weather. But you know, there's something to be said for that. There was a purity in the competition back then, and I kind of missed. And back then, the fish were smaller on Ontario and the St. Lawrence, but they were more aggressive, in my opinion. I mean, you could get them to come a long ways for a spinnerbait or a jerkbait or a topwater. I mean, and you get them to come up from 20 foot of water. I know that sounds hard to believe for a lot of the listeners, but that was the case. At least 12 and 15 foot of water, and we threw big, gaudy baits. You know, bright chartreuse spinnerbait, chartreuse jerk baits, and top waters, and you know, hot orange. I mean, there was bright colors seemed to pull them the farthest distances. But yeah, I kind of missed that. But the fish are bigger now. It's become more of a finesse game. You know, I've got some of the lures I used in this last tournament, if anybody's interested in seeing those. But basically, it's you know, downsizing tackle. More patience is involved. Back then, you kind of hit them on the fly, and if they weren't biting, you'd go to another place and keep hitting, you know, your different locations where you had fish located during practice. And nowadays, my strategy's changed quite a bit. I've slowed way down. I try and milk each individual spot the best I can.
Yeah, and one of the unique things that I saw from that tournament and was that you were doing something a little bit different. You were fishing a 4-inch Yamamoto Senko, but you were cutting it down to a specific size. Yep. You know, those fish wanted a real specific bait. I think you were fishing on the BMC net head, which is super cool. That's a great head.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was using. In fact, here it is. This is the Half Moon jig, if you can see that very well.
Yeah.
And it's basically the reason I chose the let me get it where it belongs. Chose the 4-inch Senkos because the diameter matched the head better. It was a little fuller profile, and I could get, I felt, it may be in my head, but it felt like I was getting more bites because of that. It was a great tool, and it provoked a lot of fish to strike that I think might otherwise have rejected any other offering.
Yeah. And I know too, and I think that was probably the first day of that event, you were catching some on some reaction baits too. Not so much the later days, but that we saw, but you were catching them on, I think, some jerk baits and stuff like that too.
Yeah. This particular jerk bait, I don't know if I'm going to be able to show that to you. There's a feature, you see that thing kind of flashing in the body of the bait? That's called flash boost. This is a Shimano World Minnow, and I couldn't talk about it in the tournament. It was like under top secret wraps. Shimano wanted to reveal it or introduce it at ICAST. But basically, there's a mylar plane in the body of the bait, and it pulses on its own even when the bait's not moving. You just hold it still, and it'll sit there and flash. There, that's better. And
that's cool.
I caught quite a few fish, both largemouth and smallmouth, in practice and during the tournament. Not only at the St. Lawrence, but also at Champlain. That played into my arsenal a little bit. And then I used a Yamamoto shad-shaped worm on a drop shot. I used a tungsten, and then like a stick style, just cylinder style tungsten. And I also used a marabou hair jig. That's hard to see, but anyway. I used a marabou hair jig, and then one other bait was one I designed for saltwater, and that was the Hildebrandt drum roller. You can see that. It comes two to a pack.
The last day you were throwing at it too. Yeah.
Yeah, I did. It accounted for some fish just about every day. I didn't always make the cut for live TV, but it's a 3/8 ounce tin head, and it's got a 3.5-inch Z-Man Minnow Z body that comes prepackaged with the bait, which is very durable. And like I said, it was designed originally for saltwater, but I found out a few years ago that the smallmouth really like it, and I've won a lot of money because of that bait.
Yeah, cool. And speaking of saltwater, I like seeing you catching bass, but man, that saltwater stuff is snook. I've been seeing some snook pictures recently, and I wish I had a chance to go saltwater fishing more. It's so much fun, and I think from watching you and knowing you so many years too, a lot of the things that you apply to your bass fishing, you get from saltwater. Some of that, that backwater stuff, some of the baits, the techniques, the stealth approach, something like that, and I'm not, I guess, speaking from the fan point of view, but I see a lot of that transfer into your bass fishing.
Yeah, there's definitely some overlap. I mean, sight fishing and saltwaters help my bass fishing. Lure presentations, they're a little bit different, but very similar. I use almost the same tackle, identical. About the only thing different is the leader. In bass fishing, you downsize your leader from your main line, and I'm most of the time using 10-pound on spinning tackle, 10-pound Power Pro slick, and then I go up in saltwater to 30, 40, or even 50-pound leader, fluorocarbon leader, because their jaws are so abrasive and crushers, and they go through line pretty quick. But in bass fishing, it's the reverse. You just downsize your leader, but the rods, the reels, just about everything else is the same. And it's stalking. You're trying to catch fish that you see a lot of times, and that's true in the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence and Lake Ontario in particular. I'm looking at a lot of the fish I'm trying to catch, and saltwater helps me because that's kind of the world I'm in the shallows on the Gulf or down the Keys. I'm trying to catch fish I'm looking at, and a lot of times they know you're there. So it comes down to being able to present a lure and not disturb them too much. I mean, they feel the boat and they see movement. They're very familiar with what's around them. And a lot of the fish that are on the flats and saltwater, they're scared of their own shadows. They're only there to feed and get off the flat as quickly as they can. Bass are a little more comfortable in that environment, but So I think the two play together, and saltwater's definitely helped.
Yeah, that's great observation. And what have you got going on here the rest of the year? I know it's the end of, I guess it's early August now.
Saltwater,
maybe some
saltwater.
Yeah, some saltwater fishing. I don't blame you. That's kind of what I'd be doing. It's hot right here in Tennessee and the lake, and try to get away and float and do some smallmouth stuff in some of the rivers because there's only 70 degrees. That's kind of, but soon here the fall will be getting in. We'll be catching the bass will start to get better at the lake. But yeah, I don't blame you. I'd be saltwater fishing too.
Yeah, it's we got it's kind of unusual how this played out because of postponements last year. Bass didn't want to get caught in that same scenario again this year, so they condensed the schedule to the first 6-7 months of the season, and expecting some postponements. And fortunately, we were able to get everything in, but that left a big void for the rest of the year, which I'm not complaining. I'll find plenty to do in that time off, and I'll get to work on some baits. I'll do some media junkets with some of my sponsors. I've got a new Camus ordered, so hopefully that'll get here. So I'll have an opportunity to do some pre-fishing on some of the lakes for next season towards the end of the year. But yeah, it's been good. It was a rough season overall, but I kind of bookended it with good finishes at the start and finish. I'd like to be a little more consistent next year and get back to the Classic.
Yeah, and it's a great schedule. I was looking at a little bit of it, and I think it fits into your style pretty good. I think I saw Santee on that list.
Yep. Santee's on there.
Yeah. Do you remember you and I fishing this like 100 years ago?
Oh yeah. It's fish is still pretty much the same. I mean, it's less power fishing. It seems like you have to do more finesse there as well, even though it looks like a jungle. When I fished there last fall, I had a top 10 finish there, and it was all light tackle. I was using 10-pound braid with 10-pound leader, fluorocarbon leader, and I was wacky rigging a Cinco. And I did have a couple of days where I could catch them on buzz baits, but most of it was finesse fishing around trees. In fact, it was a pattern. The guy that I traveled with, Cliff Prince, he and I worked together on that tournament, and Cliff helped a lot on that. That's somebody you need to get on the show, actually.
Yeah, definitely. And we're ramping things up and trying to do 2 shows a month here now. And I think that Santee tournament, this is how long ago this was. Jim Bitter was winning that tournament the first day, if you remember. That's how long ago you and I fished there.
Yeah, Jim's still out there. He's
so that was
quite a bit here. Yeah.
And we got Bernie, we just brought a bunch in, owner of the East Tennessee Fish Show, probably the premier bass fishing show in the whole Southeast, probably in the whole. I see her making a face at me. Is by far the best pure fishing show that there is.
Yeah, Bernie, I hope you're there this coming year. That would be great.
Yeah, that'd be good. I got a dog barking at me. And
okay, what was that you said that you? What kind of boat you got?
I'm sorry. Say that again, Sheila.
What kind of boat do you have?
I have a Camus. I have a Camus. Earl Bentz gave me a call early in the year, and we had a really good conversation. And I'm proud to say I'm in the Camus family now. He builds a beautiful boat, a super performing boat. As you well know, my career was spent with Ranger, and then things changed this past year. And I think I'm in the right place now, and hopefully we'll be able to finish my career in this with the Camus family.
Well, I understand, and Earl's a very good person to work with. Yeah,
he is. He's a very a bright man, brilliant, in fact, and what a history he's had, not only in developing fishing boats, but racing boats with Mercury Marine.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, well, maybe the viewers don't know, but anyway, his whole desire, and this is what I appreciated, he just wants to build the best boat possible. Mm-hmm. And he's all about it. He's challenging in some areas, but to work with, but that's good. I'm demanding myself, and I really have a strong appreciation, especially after the New York swing. I really learned how good his boat would perform in big water. I didn't know until those 2 tournaments, and we had some rough days, and that boat really is strong in big water. You know, whether it's boat wake, dealing with yachts and freighters and whatnot on the St. Lawrence, or just bad wind on Lake Champlain with 4 and 5 foot waves, that boat cradled itself perfectly over those waves. Really impressed.
Yes. So, yeah, Earl say he's a very good guy. I'll probably be talking to him tomorrow, by the way.
Okay, well, tell him to hurry up on my boat. I'm without a boat right
You
now.
want me to tell him that seriously?
Yeah, you can tell him that.
No, I will. I will tell him that.
Yeah.
I'll text him tonight and tell him that. How's that?
Yeah, in fact, I want him to start working on a skiff. We talked about it, and as you well know, he makes saltwater boats, and they're beautiful as well. His focus right now is on the bigger boats, but I want him to build a small skiff that'll go in skinny water, and I know he has the capability to do that. The engineering, the wherewithal, and the how to.
Well, I'll do what I can for you, but I guess it's time for us to start signing off.
Yes, it is. We are at this hour went by so quick. Hey, Bernie, so on occasion, Sheila lets me get out of the studio here and I get to go fish. I did some stuff with Mountain Man earlier in the year. She sent me fly fishing for the first time. That was a disaster. Maybe I need to do a saltwater episode. You and I get to go fish together, and we'll go put it on here in the outdoor showcase.
I'll be glad to do that. Anytime, my door is open.
Hey, that sounds wonderful to me.
Awesome. Okay, next show is going to be August 19th. Bernie Schultz, thanks very much, my friend. We'll have to continue this some other time. Sheila, as always, a pleasure. And we will see you all next time, August 19th, 6 p.m. Don't forget, Pulse Fish Lures, OS Live 30, your special code until September 4th. We got to get out of here before they pull the plug on Mike Delvisco. That is Sheila Bunch.
See you guys later.